Wednesday, August 30th. While the young men were pursuing the housekeeper with firecrackers which they threw at her legs, the princess, Uncle Alexander, and I spoke of the Pope of Rome. I pretended to be anxious about the cardinal's death. I dreamed that Pietro A was dead. I approached his coffin and placed on his neck a topaz rosary with a gold cross. Scarcely had I done so, when I saw that the dead man was not Pietro. To dream of a corpse is a sign of marriage, I believe. You can imagine my irritation, and with me irritation is shown by immobility and absolute silence. And woe to the one who teases me or even makes me speak. They talked of the morals of Poltava. Depravity is very widespread here, and they say that Madame M, in a dressing gown, has been met at night in the street with Monsieur J, as if it were an ordinary thing. The young ladies behave with extreme levity, but when they began to talk of kisses, I took refuge in my chamber. A young man was in love with a young girl, who loved him in return, but, after some time, he married another, and, when asked the reason of the change, he answered, "She kissed me, therefore, she must have kissed others, or she will do so." "He was quite right," said Uncle Alexander. "And all men think the same thing. But it is unjust in the highest degree, and the speech has sent me to my room, enraged beyond measure. It seemed as if they were speaking of me. Then, this was the reason of it all. But, in the name of heaven, grant me power to forget. Oh, God, have I committed a crime, then, that you torture me so much? You are right, Lord, and my conscience, by leaving me not a moment in peace, will cure me. What neither education, books, nor advice could teach me, I have learned by experience. I thank God for it, and I advise young ladies to be a little more selfish at the bottom of their hearts, and to guard themselves well from feeling any sentiment whatever. The more beautiful the sentiment is, the easier it is to ridicule it, the greater it is, the funnier it is. And there is nothing in the world more absurd and more degrading than love which is ridiculed. I will go to Rome with my father, I will go into society, and we shall see. A delightful drive. The prince's troika, despite Uncle Alexander's weight, went like the wind. Michel drove. I loved to go fast, the 3 horses tore along, and for some minutes I was filled with delight and excitement. Then, croquet detained us until dinner, about which time M arrived. I was already trying to think of a story, when the princess happened to mention the girls. "They are very nice, but very unfortunate," said Grits. "Why?" "Because they do nothing but travel about in search of husbands, and they never find them. By the way, they tried to catch me." Here, everybody burst out laughing. "To catch you?" asked someone. "Did you please them, then?" "Well, I rather think, but, anyway, they soon saw that I would not have it." "Just to think," I exclaimed, "it must be very unfortunate to be like that, without counting the discomfort given to others." Everyone laughed, and glances were exchanged which were anything but flattering for poor M. "Oh, well, you see, it is a very unfortunate thing to be a simpleton." In his manners this evening, I remarked the same constraint as yesterday. He fancied, possibly, that we were trying to ensnare him. All that comes of Michel. Grits scarcely dared to speak to me across the length of the drawing-room, and it was almost 9:30 ere he risked himself at my side. I smiled with disdain. Heavens, how stupid it is to be stupid. I was formal and severe, and gave the signal for departure. I know perfectly well that Michel stuffs him with all sorts of ridiculous notions. The princess once said to me, "You can never conceive of Michel's villainy, he is bad and clever. But how unfortunate to be a fool." Thursday, August 31st. Paul, utterly disconcerted, came to tell me that Papa did not wish us to go on a picnic to the forest. I threw on a wrapper and went to tell him we were going. At the end of 10 minutes, he joined me. After a lot of very funny misunderstandings, we set out for the forest, I in excellent spirits, proof against everything. Grits is as easy as the first day, and restraint and discomfort have vanished from our intercourse. We were as well served in the forest as at home. Everyone was hungry and ate heartily, while making merry at Michel's expense, for he was to have managed the party, but this morning he denied it shamelessly, and the provisions came from Gavronzi. There was some shooting, and a man was made to amuse us with his stupidity. On re-entering my room, I was so worn out that I should have spent the night in crying, if Amalia had not begun gabbling at a rate that diverted the current of my thoughts. It is best to shake off the blues, and avoid tearful scenes and lowness of mind. Moreover, I detest myself when I make these scenes. Poor Grit! At the present moment I pity him, for he left somewhat ill. Saturday, September 2nd. I have been fainting with the heat, and, when near dinner time, there arrived 2 crocodiles of Poltava. I made a grand toilet, but my spirits were very low. They set off fireworks, and we looked on from the balcony, which was all decked out with Venetian lanterns, as was the Red House and all the courtyard. Afterward, the night being wonderfully beautiful, Father proposed a walk. I changed my dress, and we went into the village. We seated ourselves in front of the cabaret, where a violinist and a mountebank were called up to dance for us. But the violinist, being accustomed to play only second fiddle, would never understand that the first was absent, and insisted on playing his second part. After listening half an hour, we slipped off to the house with perfidious intentions, to wit, my father, Paul, and I, climbed up a dizzy ladder into the belfry and rang the fire bell. I rang with all my strength. I was never before so close to a bell, and I found that if one attempts to speak while it is ringing, one experiences a sort of terrifying feeling at the first instant, for the words seem to die at the lips, as in a nightmare. Well, all that did not prove very amusing, and I was very glad to get back to my room, to which my father accompanied me, and we had a long conversation. But I was worn out, and instead of talking, I cried the whole time. Among others, he spoke to me about M, saying that Mamma had doubtless indicated him to me as an excellent part one, but that he would not take a step to arrange the match, as M was nothing but a golden beast. I hastened to reassure him. After that, we spoke of everything. Father tried to affect firmness, but I did not yield an inch, and we parted on excellent terms. Moreover, he displayed, as has been his manner for some time past, an exquisite delicacy, and in his dry, bluff way, said to me things so tender that they touched me deeply. I do not trouble myself on account of his sister T. I even told Father that she dominates him, and that, for this reason, I cannot count on him. Me. He exclaimed, "Oh, no. Why, of all my sisters she is the one I care for the least. Rest easy, when she sees you here, she will fawn upon you like a dog, and you will see her at your feet." Sunday, September 3rd. It appears that I am amusing myself. I have been born in a rug like Cleopatra. I have tamed a horse, like Alexander, and I have painted like someone who is not yet Raphael. This morning a number of us went fishing. Extended upon a rug, I pause to say that it would not do to have anyone suspect me of rolling on the ground, on the bank of the river, which is deep and beautiful at this point, in the shade of the trees, eating watermelons brought by the crocodiles from Poltava. We passed comfortably enough a couple of hours. On the return it was that I played Cleopatra, letting them carry me in the rug as far as the gate, and there we met Michel and Kapitanenko, who improvised a litter for me, by joining hands, and finally, Pasha carried me by himself. Having thus exhausted the various means of locomotion, I found myself at the foot of the grand staircase, which I mounted without assistance, but with Michel still dangling at the end of my train. I was charming at breakfast, I mean as far as my toilet goes. I wore a Neapolitan blouse of pale blue crepe de chine, trimmed with old lace, a long skirt of white taffeta and rich oriental stuff, striped with white, blue, and gold, draped in the most perfect manner. You could not imagine anything more odd and pretty. While some were playing cards and others howling at the heat, someone spoke of the Isabella horses, praising their youth, strength, and freshness. For several days, the question of my riding one of them had been discussed, but it had aroused a torrent of fears, and I had not urged the matter. Finally, today, partly through shame of my cowardice and partly to give the crocodiles something to talk about, I ordered one of the animals to be saddled. While I was waiting, my father kept glancing from me to the crocodiles, and seemed contented with the impression I made. My costume was odd, but still very becoming, and I wore upon my head a piece of white foulard, low over my forehead, drawn together behind and with the ends hanging down, after the manner of the Egyptians, covering all the back of my neck. They brought the horse, and there was a chorus of objections. Finally, Kapitanenko, in memory of his service in the Horse Guards, mounted him, But as soon as the horse started, he was so bounced about that the charitable spectators began to laugh as stupidly as could be. The horse reared, stopped short, ran, and Kapitanenko declared, in the midst of the general gaiety, that I could ride him in 3 months. I looked at the trembling beast, whose skin was everywhere covered with veins, as when the wind wrinkles the surface of water, and I said to myself, "You must give these people an exhibition of your false bravery, my child, you must behave like a girl of high degree, so that the crocodiles shall have nothing to say to your disadvantage. You are afraid. So much the better, for those only are brave who are afraid and do battle with what they fear. Bravery does not consist in doing a thing which others are afraid of and which does not alarm you, but real, true bravery is the forcing oneself to do something that one fears." I ran upstairs, put on my black habit and a black velvet cap, and descended again to mount the horse. I walked him first slowly about the lawn, with Kapitanenko by my side on another horse. Feeling the eyes of the company fixed upon me, I returned to the veranda to reassure them. My father and another gentleman entered a cabriolet, the others took their places in the PUNCT's Irat IA, and followed by the 2 carriages, I rode down the avenue. I don't know how, but quite simply it seemed to me, I trotted, then galloped, and returned to the carriages to be overwhelmed with flatteries. I was delighted, and my scarlet face seemed to breathe fire like the nostrils of my horse. I was radiant. A horse that had never been ridden. In the evening there were fireworks, the houses were illuminated, and my initials were displayed on all sides. There was a village band and the peasants danced. The table was laid on the other side of the house, and we walked through the curious crowd. "Why, it is a regular church procession," said a woman in the crowd, "and there is the body of our Lord." In fact, we were lighted by torches, and Michel carried my train, and you know that they carry on Good Friday a picture representing the body of Jesus. Michel performed some acrobatic feats, while the village boys watched him in amazement, clinging to the ropes and the swings, and looking, in the darkness, like the figures swinging on gibbets one sees in ghastly, old engravings. I was surrounded by the people, and both men and women, to gain my favor, loaded me with compliments like this, for instance. "The horse was beautiful this afternoon, but the rider far surpassed him. You know how I adore to mix with the common people, so I spoke to them all and came very near joining in the dancing. Ah, the dance of our peasants, apparently innocent, but, in reality, clever as the Italian dances, is a real Parisian can-can, and a very seditious can-can, not to say anything more. They do not raise their legs as high as their heads, which, moreover, is a very ugly fashion, but the man and the woman turn, approach each other, pursue one another, and all this with little cries, gestures, and smiles that make you shiver. The young girls dance little and very simply. We ordered something for them to drink, and taking leave of the amiable savages, I concluded to go to bed, but I stopped upon the staircase as I did the other evening, and Paul and the others grouped themselves upon the steps below. Chocolate sang us a Nicene song, to my great satisfaction. After the song, came instrumental music. I drew from the violin the most unheard of sounds, piercing, crying, hideous, which made me laugh heartily, and my laughter, with the furious accompaniment, sent the rest into convulsions, even chocolate. Thursday, September 7th. The everyday costume of a little Russian woman consists of a garment of heavy cloth, with large, puffed sleeves, and embroidered with red and blue, and a piece of black cloth, manufactured by the peasants, and which is wrapped about the figure from the waist down. This sort of apron is shorter than the main garment, the embroidery of which is seen below the apron. The apron is held up only by a colored woolen belt. A quantity of necklaces are worn and a ribbon is bound about the head. The hair is arranged in a net, from the end of which hang several ribbons. I sent and bought such a dress from the peasants, put it on, and, accompanied by our young men, went into the village. The peasants did not recognize me, for I was not dressed as a young lady, but entirely as a peasant, a girl. The married women dress differently. On my feet I wore black slippers with red heels. I bowed to everybody, and, when we reached the cabaret, we sat down near the door. When my father saw me, he was surprised, but delighted. "What won't she do next?" he cried. He made us all 4 enter his open carriage and drove us about the streets. I laughed immoderately, to the great astonishment of the good villagers, who wondered who this young peasant was who was being driven about by the old lord and the young gentleman. Papa, however, is not old. A Chinese tom-tom, a violin, and a music box amused us in the evening. Michel beat the tom-tom, I played the violin, played, May the Lord Forgive Me, and the music box played itself. Instead of retiring at an early hour, as is his custom, the author of my being stayed with us until midnight. If I have made no other conquest, I have made my father's. When he speaks, he seeks my approbation, he listens to me with attention, he lets me say what I like of Aunt T, and he agrees with me. The music box was his present to the princess. We all gave her something, it is her birthday. The domestics are delighted to serve me and to be delivered from the French. I even order the dinners. And to think that I looked upon this as a strange house, and was afraid of its habits and its regular hours. They wait for me as at Nice, and I fix the hours for everything myself. My father adores gaiety, and he is not accustomed to it in his own family. Friday, September 8th. Miserable fear, I will conquer you. Did I not take it into my head yesterday to be afraid of a gun? It is true that Paul had loaded it, that I did not know how much powder he had put in, and that I was unacquainted with the gun. It might have exploded, and that would have been a stupid death, or I might have been disfigured for life. So much the worse. It is only the first step that counts. Yesterday, I fired at 50 paces, and I fired today without any sort of fear. I believe, heaven forgive me, that I hit the bullseye every time. If I succeed with Paul's portrait, it will be a miracle, for he will not sit for me, and today I worked only 15 minutes. I was alone, no, not entirely, for opposite to me was Michel, who has dared to fall in love with me. All this brought us to 9 o'clock. I loitered, and loitered, and loitered, seeing how impatient my father was. I knew very well that he was only awaiting our departure to fly into the forest like a wolf. I again held my court upon the stairs. I love stairs, because by them we go up higher. Pasha was to go away tomorrow, but I said so much this evening that perhaps he will remain, although it would be more sensible of him to go, for to love me as a sister is dangerous for a country-bred gloomy dreamer of 22. With him and Michel, I am at my best, so of course they are very fond of me, but when I am with stupid men, I become stupid myself. I do not know what to say that will be intelligible to them, and I am afraid every instant that they will suspect me of being in love with them. Like that poor Grits, for instance, who thinks every girl is longing for him, and sees, in the least smile, traps and plots against his celibacy. Do you know the derivation of that word, celibacy? Kolebs, in Latin, means forsaken. It comes also from the Greek word kotlos, which means empty, worthless. Oh, celibates. Empty, worthless, forsaken creatures. As soon as I heard my father go out, I rushed into the princess's room, threw myself on her bed, then brushed Pasha's hair, patted Michel on the head, and said so many silly things that I am at this moment astounded at myself. May God grant that I do not grow to detest Pasha, the good boy he is. So honest. We have been reading Pauschkine aloud, and we discussed love. I would really like to fall in love, to know what it is, but perhaps I have already loved. In that case, love is a contemptible thing that one picks up, only to throw away again. You will never love, my father said to me. If that were true, I should thank heaven for it, I replied. I want to, and I do not want to. Yet, in my dreams, I love, yes, but an imaginary hero. And I love him. No, is this the way one loves? No. If he were not the nephew of a cardinal, if he had not about him priests, monks, ruins, the Pope, I should not love him. Besides, what need have I to explain? You know all better than I. You know that the music of the opera, and in the Barcaccia, produced a charming effect upon me, and you must know, also, the power of music. It was an amusement, but it was not love. When, then, shall I love? I am going again to amuse myself, to scatter, on all sides, the superabundant affection of my heart, again to become enthusiastic, again to weep and for people who are nothing. Saturday, September 9th. The days pass, and I am losing precious time in the best years of my life. Evenings spent at home, jests, and a gaiety of which I am the whole head and front, then going up and coming down in an armchair made by Michel and the other. I look at my shoes in the glass, as I come down every day like that. What weariness! Not a bright word. Not a cultivated sentence. I, unfortunately, am a pedant, and like to talk of the ancients and the sciences. Find anything of that sort here, if you can, cards, and nothing else. I would shut myself up and read, but, my object being to make myself loved, that would be a strange way to attain it. Once settled for the winter, I will begin to study as before. In the evening, Paul had some difficulty with a servant. My father encouraged the servant. I reprimanded, that is the word, my father, who swallowed the reprimand. That is not a very nice way of putting it, it is slang, and my journal is full of it. I beg you will believe that I am not vulgar through ignorance and innate vulgarity. I have adopted a way of writing, to make things concise and easily understood. Well, there was discontent in the air, I was angry, and in my voice were heard trembling notes, which presaged a storm. Paul does not know how to behave himself, and I can see that my mother was right, to be unhappy about him. Sunday, September 10th. My Majesty, myself, my father, my brother, and my 2 cousins, came to Poltava today. I am pleased with myself. They yield to me, flatter me, and, above all, love me. My father, who, in the beginning, wished to dethrone me, now almost completely understands why I should be accorded sovereign honors, and, leaving out a certain puerile asperity of his character, accords them to me. This dry man, unused to any family sentiment, shows me, at times, a paternal affection, which astonishes all those about him. Paul has, in consequence, conceived a double respect for me, and, as I am pleasant to everybody, everybody likes me. You have changed so much, since I have seen you, said my father today. How? Why, humph. That is to say, if you could rid yourself of a certain insignificant brusqueness, which, besides, I have also, you would be perfection and a real treasure. That means, well, only those who know the man can appreciate all the words mean. And this evening, again, he put his arms about me, and, tenderly kissing me, an unheard-of thing, according to Paul, he said, "See, Michel, see, what a daughter I have. There is a girl who deserves to be loved. Do I not, Papa? I am a treasure, Michel," I added, "and I promise to let you marry my daughter. Think of the honor. She may, perhaps, be a princess of the blood royal. I write from Poltava. It has rained since early morning, and, when we were forced to climb that satanic mountain, which was in about the middle of our journey, the horses almost refused to proceed. My father mounted upon the box, and the coachman descended and ran along in the mud, whipping the horses to set them galloping, and not give them time to think of the difficulty. The cracking of the whip, the cries of the footman, the coachman, and Papa, the mute astonishment of Chocolate all formed an exciting spectacle. It reminded me of the finish of a closely contested race. We reached the city at 8 o'clock, and drove straight to the prince's house. The prince, himself, left this morning at 5, to prepare his house for our reception. It is a small house, very simple on the outside, but charming within. Nothing is finished yet, but the carpets are down, and the lamps, mirrors, beds, and a stock of wines have been purchased, and are in place. In all Russian houses, there is, next to the antechamber, a hall. The hall here is all white. Then there is a charming, dark red salon, and a sleeping room for me, full of all pretty and necessary articles. At every step, I am confronted with delicate attentions. Fancy. I found upon my dressing table, powder and rouge. But arranging all this, occupied the time until 7 o'clock, and when 7 o'clock came, just before our arrival, they discovered that there was nothing to eat. When we reached the house, Michel pretended not to have expected us, fibbed very awkwardly and, pitilessly laughed at by us, remained in a state of confusion during the dinner, which was brought from the club about 10 o'clock. Some beautiful silver goblets led me into temptation. I drank 2 glasses of wine, which flushed my face slightly, and singularly loosened my tongue, just enough to make me animated. Still, I have been gay all day. My father's plans have gone astray. All those whom he wished me to meet are in the country. When Michel left us alone, we spoke of Grit's folly. "How stupid he is!" I exclaimed. Now, listen, father and brother, both of you. Did you really think, with my ideas, with all I have seen and read, that I would marry Monsieur M? Humph, said my father. Yes, he is certainly stupid. And he looked at me, not knowing whether he ought to appear disdainful or to speak his real thoughts, which surely were, M is a desirable match even for you. And now let us retire to the bed made by the prince himself. I was just now startled by piercing cries. It was Amalia who was screaming, because Paul had opened the window of the gallery and was looking at her as she took her bath. What a boy! Pasha and the prince have gone to sleep long ago. I have scarcely room for my writing materials. The table is so crowded with bottles, vials, powder boxes, brushes, sachets, etc. Delighted over my success with my father, I write privately to myself, those who do not love me are brutes, and those who love me badly are criminals.
Hi, this is Rose from Ambience World. If you are enjoying reading by the fire, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing.
Tuesday, September 12th. A day at Poltava. It is marvelous. Not knowing what to do, my father took me on foot through the city, and we saw Peter the Great's column, which is in the middle of the gardens. Monday, at midnight, we left Poltava, and today, Tuesday, we are in Kharkov. The journey was a pleasant one. We engaged a whole carriage. I was awakened near Kharkov by a bouquet from Prince Michel. Kharkov is a large town lighted by gas. The hotel where we are is called the Grand Hotel and justifies its name. Kept by Andrew, the house offers every comfort. Moreover, it is here that the gilded youth of the district sup, breakfast, dine, get tipsy, and fraternize with the innkeeper, who, in spite of that, never forgets his position, which astonishes me. Queer manners they have here. I had my hair dressed by Louis, a French hairdresser. Then tea and spiced bread. Oh, yes, I visited a menagerie and the poor caged beasts made me sad. I met my uncle Nicholas, the youngest of the family, who pretends to study medicine. My poor uncle and I long ago used to play with dolls together, and I used to beat him and box his ears. I kissed him, ready to burst into tears. Between us, there must be no ceremony, I said. Papa does not like you, but I love you with all my heart. I am still the same, only a little taller, that is all. Dear Uncle Nicholas, I cannot ask you to breakfast. I am not alone and there are all sorts of strange people here, but come and see me tomorrow, surely. I entered our private dining room in a high state of excitement. There is nothing to worry about, said my father. You could have invited him if you wished to, but I should have found some good excuse to be absent. Father, you are not kind today, and it is useless to speak of it any further. Enough. My father was abashed before my dry bitterness, and no more was said. Thursday, September 14th. They were speaking of Pasha's departure, while he came and went changing the guns, for, like Nimrod, he is a mighty hunter before the Lord. My father asked him to remain, but he is so obstinate that when he has once said no, he would not change for the world. I have named him, because of the freshness of his ideas, the innocent. Asterisk I can say, without ceremony, because I am sure of it, that the innocent thinks everything in the world of me. I begged him to remain. Don't ask me to do so, I implore you, for I cannot grant your request. I insisted, but in vain. I should not have been sorry to have kept him, especially because I knew that it was well nigh impossible. At the station, we were met by Lola, her mother, and Uncle Nicholas, who had come to see me off. There was an enormous crowd to see the departure of 57 volunteers for Servia. I walked all about the station with Paul, or Lola, or Michel, or Pasha, in fact, with each in his turn. Really, Pasha is very unkind, said Lola, when I told her of his obstinacy. Then, with an effort not to laugh, I approached the innocent and made him a little speech, very dry and very offended, and then, as there were tears in his eyes and as I was longing to laugh, I retired in order not to spoil the effect I had produced. One could scarcely move about, and it was with great difficulty that we reached our car. The crowd amused me and I looked out of the window. They jostled and pushed each other with all sorts of cries. Suddenly, I was startled by hearing a chorus of boys' voices, purer and sweeter than a woman's. They were singing a church hymn, and it seemed like a choir of angels. They were the Archbishop's singers, and they were chanting a prayer for the volunteers. Everyone uncovered, and the divine harmony, and the beautiful voices took away my breath. When they had finished, and I saw everybody waving their hats and their handkerchiefs, with my eyes shining with enthusiasm and my breast filled with emotion, I could do nothing else than scream hurrah with the rest, and laugh and cry. The noise lasted for some time, and did not cease until the same choir intoned the Russian hymn, Boje, Zoria Krani. But the prayers for the emperor seemed insignificant after the prayer for those who were going to die in defense of their brothers. And the emperor allows the Turks to act like this. Heavens! The train started amidst frantic hurrahs. Then I turned and saw Michel laughing, and heard my father say Durak instead of hurrah. Papa, Michel, is it possible? What are you made of? Won't you say goodbye to me? Asked Pasha, very red and awkward. The train was moving. Au revoir, Pasha, I said, holding out my hand, which he seized and kissed, without saying a word. Michel was jealous. I saw him looking at me for some time, then he threw his hat on the floor, and rose in a fury. I laughed. Here I am again in Poltava, that detestable city. Kharkov. I knew better. I passed a year there before I went to Vienna. I remembered all the streets and all the shops. This afternoon, at the station, I recognized the doctor who took care of Grandmama, and I spoke to him. He was astonished to see me so tall, although Uncle Nicholas had already told him about me. I longed to return to the south. Knowest thou the land where the orange tree blooms? Not Nice, but Italy. Friday, September 15th. This morning Paul brought me little Etienne, Uncle Alexander's son. I did not recognize him at first. I paid no attention to the more or less pleasure that the sight of a Barbenine causes father, but I devoted myself to the pretty little boy. At last father has taken me to call upon the notables of Poltava. First, we went to the prefect's. The prefect's wife is a woman of the world, and, really, very amiable. I liked the prefect also. He had a committee with him, but he came to the salon and told my father that there was no committee which could make him lose the opportunity of seeing so charming a young lady. The prefect's wife conducted us to the door herself, and we resumed the search for people that it was proper for me to meet. We went to the vice-governors, to the directress of the Institute for Noble Young Ladies, and to Madame Volkovitsky's, Kochubey's daughter. The latter is very well bred. Then I took a cab and went to see Uncle Alexander, who is here at the hotel with his wife and children. Ah, how good it is to be among one's own people. You fear neither criticism nor injustice. Perhaps my father's family seems to me cold and unpleasant, through contrast with ours, which is extraordinarily loving and united. Talking business, love, and scandal, I passed 2 hours very agreeably. But, at the end of this time, messages began to arrive from my father, and, as I replied that I was not ready to go yet, he came himself, and I tormented him for more than half an hour, loitering, seeking for pins, my handkerchief, etc. At last we left, and when I thought that he was a little calmed down, I said, "We have been very impolite." "Why?" "Because we have been to see everybody except Madame M, who knows Mama and who knew me as a child. And then we had a long discussion, which ended in a refusal to go there. When the prefect asked me how long I was going to remain with my father, I said that I hoped to carry him back with me. Did you hear what the prefect said when you said that you wanted to carry me back with you?" asked the illustrious author of my days. "No, what?" "He said that, being marshal of the nobility, I would have to obtain permission from the minister." "Well, ask it at once, so that nothing need detain us here too long." "Very well. Then you will go with me?" "Yes." "Are you speaking seriously?" "Yes." It was past 8 o'clock, and the darkness of the carriage permitted me to say anything without my face betraying me. Saturday, September 16th. I continue to be contented. The flatteries of the governor and his wife have increased my father's esteem for me. The effect that I produce flatters him, and, in fact, I am not angry myself when anyone says, "You know Bashkirtseff's daughter is a great beauty." The poor imbeciles, they have never seen anything. Gavronzi, Sunday, September 17th. While waiting for my future celebrity, I went to a hunt in masculine attire, with a game bag slung over my shoulders. We set out, my father, Paul, the prince, and I in a charabanc. Now, I cannot find a word to describe the excursion, for I do not know the name of, well, in fact, everything appertaining to the chase. The brambles, the reeds, the shrubs, the trees were all so thick that we could scarcely make our way through them. The air was delightfully pure, there was no sun, and a light rain which delighted the hunters, who were warm. We walked. I made the tour of a small lake, my gun loaded and ready to fire, hoping every moment to see a duck rise, but nothing. I was beginning to wonder if I should not fire at the lizards, which were crawling about my feet, or at Michel, who walked behind me, and who, I felt, had his eyes impudently fixed upon me in my masculine attire. I found the happy medium, that happy medium which is never found in France, and shot a crow that had perched on the top of an oak, suspecting nothing, all the more so as his attention was distracted by my father and Michel, who had thrown themselves on the ground in the middle of a clearing. I pulled out his tail feathers and made myself an aigrette. The others did not fire once, they only walked. Paul killed a thrush, and that was the whole hunt. A mother, who thinks her child is dead, and dead by her own fault, who is not certain of its death, and who does not dare to inquire lest her fears may be confirmed, that mother suddenly finds again that child who has caused her so much anguish, who has made her doubt and suffer so much. Ah, that mother must be happy. It seems to me that that is almost what I experience in recovering my voice. After laughing heartily in the salon, I stopped a moment, and suddenly I could sing. I owe this to Dr. Wolitsky's remedy. Tuesday, September 19th. I am wearied with hearing slighting allusions to my family, which I cannot resent. I could have closed my father's mouth, if I had not been afraid to lose my means to an end. He is good to me, and I am willing to acknowledge it. How could one be otherwise to a bright, educated, agreeable, sweet, and good girl, for I am all that here, and he says it himself, who asks nothing of him, who has come to pay him a visit of courtesy, and who gratifies his vanity under all aspects. When I entered my room, I longed to throw myself on the floor and cry, but I restrained myself, and the feeling passed away. That is what I shall always do. I must not give people who are indifferent to me the power of making me suffer. When I suffer, I am humiliated. It disgusts me to think that such or such an one has been able to make me suffer. Well, in spite of all, life is the best thing in the world. Friday, September 22nd. I have certainly had enough of it. The country stuns me, paralyzes my intellect. I have told my father so, and, as if I had told him that I wished to marry a king, he began to show me how foolish it was, and to criticize my family again. I did not agree with what he said. One may say certain things, but one does not care to hear them said. I told him that the reflections on my family were all the result of Madame T.S. Fossard's. I have not yielded to my good aunt, and I have employed the best means to shake her influence. Oh, Rome! The Pincio, which rises up like an island from the plain, broken here and there by aqueducts, the Porta del Popolo, the obelisk, the churches of Cardinal Gustolo, which are on each side of the Corso itself, the palace of the Venetian Republic, those narrow, somber streets, those palaces blackened by centuries, the ruins of a little temple to Minerva, and finally the Colosseum. It seems to me as if I could see it all now. I close my eyes and I walk through the city, I visit the ruins, I see. I am not one of those who say, out of sight, out of mind. Scarcely has an object disappeared from my sight than it acquires a double value. I think of it in all its details, I admire it, I love it. I have traveled much and seen many cities, but two only have excited my enthusiasm to the highest pitch. The first was Baden-Baden, where I passed 2 summers when a child. I can still remember the lovely gardens. The other was Rome. Rome made a very different impression upon me, but stronger, if possible. It is the same way with Rome as it is with certain persons whom one does not like at first, but for whom love increases little by little. This is the way lasting affections are formed, which are very sweet without the anguish of passion. I love Rome, nothing but Rome. And St. Peter's. St. Peter's, when a ray of light, penetrating through the roof, falls upon the floor and forms shadows and luminous tracks there as regular as the architecture of its columns and its altars a ray of the sun, that, by the aid of shadows only, has erected in this temple of marble a temple of light. With my eyes closed, I transport myself to Rome, and it is night, and tomorrow will come the hippopotami from Poltava. I must be pretty. I will be so. The country has done me enormous good, my complexion has never been so fresh and transparent. Rome. And I shall not go to Rome. Why not? Because I don't wish to. If you knew what that resolution has cost me, you would pity me. Wait. My tears are falling. Sunday, September 24th, 1876. It is beginning to be cold, and it was with a feeling of profound disgust that I was aroused at 7 o'clock. At 8, I tried to gain a few minutes more, and at 9, I was in the salon, my black velvet cap on my head, and my habit caught up so as to show my embroidered boots. The hunters were all there: Kamensky, a porthose in appearance; Volkovitsky, a fury from Iphigenia e.g. Taurus Pavelka, a frightful lawyer; Salko, a wretched architect; Schwab, the owner of 17 hounds; Lyobowicz, a chinovnik, almost as enormous as Kamensky, a man whose name I do not know; my father, Michel, and Paul. They all examined the guns, discussing the cartridges, taking tea, and exchanging stupid and vulgar witticisms. I do not include in this my father and our own 2 young men. I rode with my father and our 2 guns, for carriages followed us closely. Do you know how a wolf hunt is conducted in Russia? To begin with, excuse my blunders on the subject of sport, for I really know nothing about it. This is how it is arranged. The hunt is announced in the district a week ahead, through the starozha or bailiff, so that he may collect the necessary number of men, but, on account of a fair at Poltava, only 120 came from there. Altogether, there were 200 men present, and nets were stretched over a line extending 4 to 6 miles. Price Kochubey, who could not come himself, sent his nets. I shivered. My father placed us all, in no particular order, on each side of the path. He counted us and then made 2 parties, those with guns and those without. Among the peasants, about 20 had guns; to the rest, they distributed pikes, long poles with an iron fleur-de-lis in the end, just as were in use by the ancient Gauls. These pikes are used in a cowardly way to kill such beasts as are caught in the net. The nets are stretched in such a way that the beasts are caught in them after having run rapidly along the path on each side of which the hunters are ambushed. It was time to begin. The Polish steward on horseback, wearing an oilskin cap like a helmet and carrying a pike which, though he was on horseback, reached to the ground and above his head, galloped about and moved around without doing anything. I arranged my gun, adjusted my game bag, which contained a pocket handkerchief and my gloves, coughed, and was ready. Think of me alone in the midst of the forest, with a loaded and cocked gun in my hands, damp feet, and thoroughly cold. My steel heels sunk into the ground, damped by yesterday's rain, which increased the cold and made walking difficult. What think you that I did as soon as I was alone? Nothing extraordinary. I looked first for what was visible through the trees, sky, a grey and cold sky. Then I looked around me. I saw tall trees already tinged by autumn. Finally, I noticed my father's cloak lying on the ground. I stretched myself on it and began to think. Just then I felt something warm beside me. I turned. Heavens! 3 animals, both tame and caressing, our large black dog and the 2 little black dogs. Jonk 1, and Jonk 2. At last I heard a shot, the signal, and then the cries of the peasants, though still far away. As they came nearer, my dreaminess disappeared, and when they were near enough to raise in me the feelings which the cries of a crowd always cause, even when they laugh, I rose, seized my gun, and listened. Their shouts came nearer, until I heard the blows with which they were striking the bushes to make the noise greater. I seemed every instant to hear the bushes breaking, for the wolves prefer the thicker brush. They were shouting louder and louder, and when the first men appeared, my heart jumped. I believe that I trembled for a moment, but the men drove nothing before them, the nets were empty. After inspecting them, nothing was found but a poor hare, which the giant Kamensky killed with a kick, the abominable brute. Compliments went round about the poor luck, and we went gaily to the open plain, where, behind a heap of straw or hay, it was arranged to take a meal of salt meat and drink brandy. The peasants were feasted on roast sheep, pies, and brandy. This is natural in Russia, and seems to them magnificent. Those honest animals, shall I call them men, examined with curiosity this creature, a little more woman than man, who carried a gun and smiled at them freely. My father discussed horses with them. I think he talked Servian politics. After resting, we took to the thick woods again, but since, instead of the wolf, we hunted hares, it was necessary to walk continuously, following the 29 dogs, and their keeper, which Prince Kochubey sent yesterday. The sun came out, and I should have felt gay, if fatigue had not taken the place of the dampness. After 2 hours walking, we had not seen even a hare's tail. This made me impatient, and finding our carriage, I returned with my father to the paternal roof. I took a perfumed bath, dressed myself, and went down to meet the others, who had brought in 3 hares. I was adorably pretty, that is to say, so far as I can be pretty, but it was useless. None of these monsters resemble a man. With the peasants I am talkative and familiar, with those who are my equals in education I am agreeable enough, I think. But what was I to do with these rustics? To avoid talking to them, I gambled and lost 100 francs to the giant. They started gambling again and I went to the library to write a letter to a horse dealer at St. Petersburg. Of course the prince followed me, and after having asked to be allowed to kiss my hand, which I permitted without showing too much disgust, the little fellow looked at me, sighed, and asked my age. 16. Well, when you are 25, I will ask you to marry me. That is charming, I said. And then you will repulse me as you have today. This brilliant day ended with a concert on the stairs. My voice, that is, one half of it delighted them, but I believe that they admire without understanding anything. Monday, September 25th. My father took me to the gallery to see a peasant wedding party, which had come to salute us. The marriage took place yesterday. The husband wore the usual costume, black boots to the knees, large trousers of a dark color, and a sweater, a sort of cloak, folded from the waist, of a natural maroon cloth, woven by the countrywomen, an embroidered shirt, of which the front is visible, and a colored ribbon, instead of flowers, in the buttonhole. His wife wore a skirt and jacket shaped like a man's, but of material of a quieter shade of color. Her head, instead of being dressed with flowers and ribbons, like the girls' heads, was wrapped up in a silk handkerchief, which hid her hair and forehead without covering her ears and neck. They came into the room, followed by the best men and bridesmaids, and by those who had negotiated the marriage. Husband and wife knelt 3 times to my father. Wednesday, September 27th. I had a laughing conversation with my father, which gave me a chance to say anything. He was hurt by my last words the day before yesterday. He complains, says that he has led a life of folly, that he has simply amused himself, but that he finds something wanting, that he is not happy. With whom are you in love? I asked, laughing at his sighs. Do you wish to know? Here he blushed so strongly that he put his arms up to hide his face. Yes, tell me. With Mama. His voice trembled so, that I had to laugh to hide my emotion. I knew that you would not understand me, said he. Excuse me, but this matrimonially romantic passion is so little like you. Because you mistake me. But I swear it. I swear to you it is true. Before this portrait of my grandmother, before this crucifix, the blessed gift of my father, and he crossed himself before the picture and the cross hanging above the bed. Perhaps, he continued, it is because I always imagine myself young as formerly, because I live in the memory of the past. When we were separated, I went almost mad. I walked as a pilgrim, to pray to the Virgin of Eterna, but they say that this Virgin brings misfortune, and it is true, for things became more and more entangled. And then, shall I tell you? You will laugh. When you lived at Kharkov, I went there, alone, in disguise. I took a carriage, and watched your rooms. I stayed a day to see her pass, and then returned, without having been detected. If that were true, it would be very affecting, I said. Now, tell me. Since we are speaking of your Mama, has she an aversion for me? Aversion? Why? Certainly not, none at all. Because, sometimes one has insurmountable antipathies. Not at all, I assure you. Then we talked it over, at length. I spoke of her, as of a saint, which she is, and has been to me, ever since I can remember anything. It was late. I was sleepy. At home I should have supped, written, and read. At 8 this morning, we were just starting for Poltava, when MME. Helen K., mother of Pasha, arrived. She is an amiable hunchback, a little affected. We took tea together, and then started. My father has been called there to preside. It was cold, and it rained every now and then. I took a walk, and then we went to a photographer. I posed as a peasant standing, sitting, and lying down asleep. We met G. You have met my daughter? Asked my father. Yes, monsieur, I have met her. You cannot meet a finer girl, can you? And there is no finer, and never has been. I beg your pardon, sir, there were such in the time of Olympus. You pay compliments, I see. Monsieur G. The gentleman is rather plain, rather dark, rather respectable, passably polite, an adventurer, a gambler, and fairly honourable. At Poltava he is looked on as most cultivated and polished. The first cold of the winter compelled me to put on my furs. Shut up, as they have been, they keep the odour they had in Rome and are. This odour, these furs. Did you ever notice how a perfume, a tune, a colour can carry you to any place? To pass a winter in Paris? Oh, no. Thursday, September 28th. I weep from ennui. I want to go away. I am unhappy here. I lose my time, my life. I am miserable. I rust. I suffer. I am ill-tempered, that is the truth. This life is distressing to me. Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Take me away from it.
End of part 4. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you won't miss part 5 of the Journal of Marie Bashkirtseff.